So once we have the fabric glued to these boards and I've let them sit overnight and they're ready to go, we'll come back to, this is the gesso that I made yesterday using the chalk powder and a slightly thicker concentration of glue. And so I made this, I put it in the refrigerator. It was already pretty solid before, but because it's cold right now, it's completely solid. And what I will do is I'll just spoon out, probably this small container here. You see about the size of my hand. See, I like using these sort of metal containers because when I've done this in glass containers, like this one here, this would be about the size I would have used to something just about as wide as this is a 2-inch brush, something that's easy to get in there to clean off. So this one's just meets that requirement as well. But this would be about enough for a board, kind of about that size right there. And but I like using these metal ones because when I use the glass ones, several times they broke just due to the contraction and expansion of hot water and cooling water and then putting more hot water back in. If you have the ability, I don't have it right here, but if I had a small heater that you can control the temperature at a very minimal degree, you would have this pot of water here just sitting on that and just keeping the water at a certain temperature. I just have to keep going back and forth and adding boiling water, and it works for the quantities that I'm using, but probably would be nice to have a small heater. And then if you had like a double boiler, you could just keep it from getting too hot. So what I'll do is just with a spoon, I'll just do it now. Come in and take some of this. That's what it looks like. Wow, it's actually quite heavy. I think this is a slightly different recipe than what I used in the past, but it looks like chalk. But I'll put in, don't know if it doesn't look like a piece of chalk, but that's what it is, with glue. Okay, so you can see here I've got pretty much full, and we need to take a break, and I'll come back because this water is not very hot right now. But I would just put this in the water, probably take about 10 minutes, and that will be liquid, and I'll show what it looks like then. Okay. So just to show the very technical aspect of this, boiling water with too short of a cord, but I just add this occasionally to my pot. It's already almost full, so I'm not going to add too much, but just doing this for dramatic effect. And it's actually very close, I can tell right now, for the gesso to be melted. Let me set this out of the way. Okay, so I have a dedicated single chopstick, which you can see is deformed a little bit, overuse. I've always used this for the process of making stirring and keeping everything warm and moving about. So just earlier when I brought this board up, this I made about a month ago and ran out of materials, and so I just let it sit for a while. But this board has had the glue and the fabric attached to it. But I noticed there was an imperfection of fabric here, and there was some sort of here, I think it was a piece of like sawdust underneath the thing. So I just took some sandpaper and just very lightly, ooh, I like the sound of that, without damaging too much of the fabric. Just kind of sanded those down. That'll make my life a lot easier later when I'm trying to get a smooth surface. So this board is ready to go. It would be ideal to show a demo on a board like this, but we'll make do with what we've got. So, make sure I don't burn myself. Here is the gesso. Here we go a little closer so you can kind of see the, where's my spoon? It's a liquidy. Now I read an interesting account that with the gesso, probably even when I'm doing right here stirring this, I should have been a little more careful. You don't want to add air into it, because then as you put the gesso down, there can be a tendency, what's called air bubbles, to come to the surface. I read a trick, and I started having this happen to me once with the air bubbles, was to add rubbing alcohol that you have in your medicine cabinet possibly, and that takes the air bubbles out, and it did. So, trick. And also too, as this is heating, especially if I'm doing, like working for an hour or so, doing these boards, that the moisture content of this is evaporating. So periodically throughout this process, it's good to add a little bit of water into your, this is the gesso mix. And so how I would typically do that would just be to put my brush in the water there, and actually probably how I do it initially would be to just have a spoon and just dip water into here, but I'm not needing to do that at this point. And you just paint the surface, trying to get an even coat. And these first layers are, I don't know if I'd say it's not important, but don't think we need to worry about too much other than trying to coat the entire surface with the gesso. And we don't, you can see I keep going back and forth over it because I'm trying to smooth it out, and I mean just the minimal amount of gesso that we can put down, and then I have to be careful. On occasions you'll see, because I'm working with a very cheap latex paintbrush, sometimes the bristles start to come out, and so any kind of imperfection, I don't know what that's from, but sometimes if it's better to work in a very clean environment. So this was an old board, so there's some dirt here on the side, so as I'm doing this I might be picking up dirt and applying it onto the board. If I were more diligent, trying to pay attention to stuff like that, I could do that. So it's maybe the next step of my learning and evolution as an artist. So I'm just getting all the edges and corners, and it looks like I've been doing this long enough now that I probably was just about right on my guesstimate for how much gesso I needed to apply. Needed to heat up to do this demo. And I can feel it's starting to get a little thicker, so this is where I would just add a spoonful or two of water. Kind of mix it in there. And maybe even a little bit too much. And we say that you need to do, I'd say 10 to 15 coats of this gesso. And the first 5 or 6 coats that I'll do will just be like this, just really rough, fast, just getting the material onto the board, smoothing it out. But then once you get to a certain point, as you're doing this process, you need to be even really careful not to be getting ridges and textures into the board. Because the ideal is a board that's, yeah, almost like a piece of glass or a piece of polished marble. And at certain points, like right now, I'm basically just working in this direction. I could come back. Probably the next time I do this, I will do it this direction. And just to make sure everything is being coated. Making sure I'm not leaving any bits of fabric, cloth, strings kind of attached to it. So, see there's still enough there. And so this is good enough. I don't know if looking at it you can see, but it's, I'll be looking at it from different angles, seeing the light there. I can see there's a lot of, not holes, but I can see a little bit of the fabric coming through in various places. I don't think that's a problem, because the next time I come over, that's why we do 10 to 15 layers of gesso, trying to just cover the whole surface. And, so that will be good enough for the first